Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Super Paranormal Chronicles. Tonight, I have got a returning guest. If you can remember all the way back to season one, episode 43, I interviewed Sadhu Dah, who is a world-traveling paranormal specialist, digital nomad, and exorcist. Brother, welcome. Good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you again too, man. It was an absolute pleasure the first time around.
Yeah, so we're going to basically we're going to continue where we left off. And I believe tonight we're going to talk about some of the cryptids that are in Thailand and Thai traditions with regard to exorcisms and such like that. So, where do you want to start?
I guess we could kind of start with some of the cryptids. Um, there's a few interesting ones. A lot of the ones that generally come to mind would be like, for example, you have the Garuda, right? Which is um, it's actually the national symbol of Thailand is the Garuda. So that's how important it is culturally. And what I find to be unique about the cryptids in Thailand is there is a lot that is talked about in lore when it comes to the Himapon, which is a heavenly type of dimension that is similar in comparison with lore describing the Fey realm. So these beings sometimes will cross over in our dimension, but they're not from our dimension. And when they come over to our dimension, there are certain kind of conditions. So the Payanak is a good example as well, also known as the Naga. And these are half serpent, half human beings. And I'd give it like the context of like a mermaid, right? But except with a snake. And
Okay.
they are the only known enemy of the Garuda. So they kind of fight back and forth. The Garuda and the Payanak have been at war for God knows how long. And
Okay.
then we have interesting creatures like the Makalipom or Neripo. And this is one of the more interesting ones because there is a temple in Thailand that I've been to. I think it's Wat Jaidinak, but I can go into my files and I can get you the name and I can send you a link for the YouTube video I made where I showed the corpse on display.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a little plant person. They say that they grow as a fruit from a tree. And maybe you've heard about this in some context in lore somewhere, but in Thailand they call it like Makalipom, and it's a woman. It looks just like a girl, but top of her head has like basically the where a fruit stem comes, right? And they
Okay.
grow until they're full sized, and then they kind of like a ripe fruit fall off the tree, and they look indistinguishable from a normal human. The difference, however, is that when they come into our world, um, they have a very, very limited amount of time where they shrivel up and they die. And there's a temple where you can see one of the bodies on display. And they actually had some scientists that came out there and did uh, genetic testing, or if I don't know what the exact terminology is for when they test the DNA against a bank of other types of species, and it came up blank. There was nothing that it compared to as a match. So take that for what you will, but it looks like a shriveled. It's tiny. It's like this small. And when I was asking one of my teachers about it, I was like, well, I thought, they said they look like normal human. And he said, well, they do, but when they die in our realm, they shrivel up to just a few inches tall. And they look like a
Wow.
human shaped dried fruit. But that's not how they look before they shrivel up and die. So that's another one of them. But yeah, I mean, you have all kinds of things like the were tigers and and the pipong, which is a similar to like a Japanese kappa, little water demon. Um, Thailand's full of these, but let me know if there's anything in specific that you want to dive into.
So, as in like European culture, we have people or parents telling children that don't go to the river because there's like a sea monster. So is there that kind of tradition in Thailand as well, where they will have like a cryptid or a creature, but it's more of a deterrent for children than real, so to speak?
Yeah, so I couldn't remember the exact creature that it was supposed to be, but there was a there was a village that had this was like actually in Indonesia, but there was a village that had this story about this one section of the woods for generations, like two or three generations that people were not supposed to go to because there is this creature that lives there with the teeth and the eyes and the claws and it kills children. Adults who go there cautiously are said to be spared, but children, it exclusively finds children so delicious. Well, what I found after this has become like a very lore story driven that now just people recite it. It ended up actually being that there's a lot of steep drop off cliffs covered by foliage. And I believe that at one point, that story started as a deterrent to keep children from running around and playing in an area where it's so easy to fall to your death, where you just won't see it if you're running around being a kid. And there had been cases of children that disappeared and were never found again. But the most likely culprit in that situation was that they fell in these like cliff-like sinkholes and died. And
Yeah.
a village elder kind of taking into account the superstitious nature of the people and seeing an opportunity to say no, don't go over here because it's dangerous and you could get hurt. What are kids going to do? Kids don't care.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's a monster that will eat your flesh and bones. That works on children. And over time, people forgot where the story came from, and then it's just adults even won't go there because they're scared of it. But end up just being like an area of natural danger in the environment. And it
Yeah.
kind of makes me wonder, in certain situations, like we've heard in some lore about like, the swamplands where the gas settles and whole villages, would die in their sleep overnight from the fumes and the buildup of carbon dioxide. When all reality, it's a very natural, explainable thing, but it had to be the demon of the bogs, right?
Yeah. So with North American culture, we have the Sasquatch, we have Bigfoot, we have Dogman. In like Nepal and stuff like that, we have the Yeti. Is there anything that really stands out as a Thai cryptid that is similar to these creatures that you haven't kind of mentioned already?
There is one which comes to mind in relation to the Bigfoot Yeti type of thing, and those are the Yaoni, which are these little basically they're described as black people. So they look like an African American, but they're tiny. And I don't mean like dwarf size. Like they're like 2 feet tall, like really small, and they're very dangerous, very primitive and tribal, and they have their own language, and they completely subsist off of the jungles, and they have like these tunnels that they dig. And so whenever you go exploring around in the jungle, if you come across any kind of tunnel, you're supposed to leave an offering of fruit, like jackfruit or dragon fruit or something, durian as well. You leave there so that if you come across the Yaoni, that maybe they will spare your life because you gave an offering to walk through their forest. That's one that comes to mind for me. But I think the most prolific one really is the Naga, the Payanak, the serpentine beings, because everyone has some sort of story about seeing a Naga. They're celebrated in the temples, and there are quite a few weird happenings that involve a tale with the Naga that have been kind of spread throughout the country, including in like E10, where you have the sleeping giant, caverns where it looks like the scales of a snake coming out of the ground, and it's massive and fossilized.
Okay. So when we start talking about cryptids from different parts of the world, like I had a guy on talking about Mexican ones, and I completely bastardized all the names. Like I could not create. So I'm gonna have a go at saying this one. Look, it looks easy, but is it Pai Tai Hong, which is more of a ghost than a physical cryptid?
That is more common that you'll see is the stories of the ghosts. Like you have the Pontianak in Thailand as well, Pai Te Hong, Mei Hong. You have the Pai. You have all these different type of ghost spirits, but they fall under the domain of like revenant or wraith type spirits, or vampiric type of entities, and they're usually very elemental or situationally based. Whether it be like if you died in the element of water, then you're going to be like a nom te hong. So you would have like this suffix of the element, because if you were, let's say, a Pontianak, for example, a Pontianak only is ever created in one specific way, and that is death during childbirth. That's what births, no pun intended, but that's what births a Pontianak. And they're like these creatures with really long, claws, and they mimic the sound of a child in the forest. And their telltale sign of like a Pontian attack is a ripped open stomach and like the intestines completely eaten out.
Okay, so I did kind of Google some, and I think you've mentioned most of them, but I've got a couple that I don't know how good these are. I'm going to say it wrong. I know I am. Suvana Maka. Familiar with that one?
Suvana, soy.
Suvannamacc.
Describe it for me.
Golden fish is a daughter of Ravana appearing. Oh, hang on. Forget that, because it's not even Thai. It's in Cambodia. So let's not even.
I know about the Gumentong, the little golden boy, the little ghost child, but that's different.
Well, look, I'm just going by Wikipedia.
No worries, brother.
Yeah. So, how prominent are these stories and sightings compared to how they are in North America? Because, like, literally, you can throw a stone, and every man and his dog will say, or they'll come out with a Bigfoot or a dog man or a Sasquatch story. So, are these common stories in Thailand, or are they really like they stick to religious kind of beliefs rather than sightings?
They tend to be common because one of the key things you have to understand when it comes to the religious nature of Thailand. So the country over 90% Buddhist, Theravada Buddhist specifically, but What's so unique about Thailand versus Sri Lanka, because they're both countries with Theravada Buddhism, is that before the 14th century, in the region that was called Siam, before it was Thailand, in the kingdoms before, um, you had animistic traditions that were heavily influenced from like Cambodian Bareng and Nat worship of Burma, Myanmar, and you had like Laotian and Vietnamese influences as well, and even some of the old like it's a Muslim country now, but you had like the Taoist roots of Malaysia, and all of this kind of conspired together with the indigenous peoples like the Lana of the north in Thailand, now modern day Thailand, and some of the Khmer people. And you had very old animism, nature-based worship, things like that. So when they became in the 14th century a Buddhist country, you were never able to shake it fully. So it integrated with the Buddhism today, which means that the superstitions and the ritual practices, all of this made its way into the mainstream Buddhism. So now you have, monks in temples who practice the Tai Wicha, the magic, the old way. And they have Sanpakum all over the whole country, outside of government buildings, in every soy like neighborhood, and in just anywhere you can think of, you're going to run into a Sanpakum. And it's a little, it looks like a little dollhouse, and they're for appeasing the local land spirits so that they don't haunt the people or ruin a business. So on a very base level, everybody as a whole tends to believe in ghosts, and they do what they can to protect themselves from it. And so naturally, a lot of people do have a story as well. But the difference with like the North American kind of storytelling and the Asian storytelling is you also see people doing things preventatively or to try to protect themselves, like wholesale, like across the country. You don't really see that in North America. You don't see people setting up, unless they're like Native American, they might have a dream catcher if they're a little bit more spiritual or open, eclectic practicing, but not everybody has one, right? And they don't all
Yeah.
have, a foundation for what to do if this happens.
Yeah. So you touched on magic there. So obviously, yeah, we know in certain cultures magic is more prolific, and then in certain cultures you have like the voodoo kind of thing. How is magic spoken about and treated in Thailand?
Um, it's used as an answer for everything before seeking a Western alternative. So you're getting sick or something, and this is more heavily prevalent on that extent in like the countryside. But when you're in the city, like in Bangkok or like central in like Chiang Mai or something like this, people are going to go to the doctor first, right? But even so, they might be wearing an amulet already to help protect them, or they have something they got from their ajan, like a master, that will help and assist. But for most people who live outside of the city, it's their first answer, magic. And then if you come from the city, or you have a more educated family, then you're going to employ like Western help in combination with the magic. It's used for like everything from lottery numbers to crossing over family members that have passed to helping you get like using like Kunpan or like Salika charming magic to get that girl that you're into, or to try to get that promotion at work or get that new job. They use it in every demographic, and there are different masters who specialize in what the magical systems are called Wicca. So you have like different types of Wicca that some master may be devoted to. So people go to him for this, but they wouldn't go to him for something else. and you have like a prevalence of them around the country. So it's not like they're hard to find and you have to go seek out, some hermit like deep off in the jungle. There are those too, but they're pretty easy to access if you know where to go.
Okay. And do these people kind of incorporate the stereotypical herbs and leaves for remedies like you get in some cultures?
Um, yes, but not always for ingesting. Sometimes it'll be, ingredient material for an amulet that you'll be wearing, and you say the kata, like a prayer, which activates it. It's like, you want to watch TV, you got to turn it on with a remote, correct? So this the same application here is you'll use the kata to activate the power of the amulet, and the amulet will be composed from many different sacred and special ingredients. Like you'll have some that have over 100 ingredients in it, but just one of those ingredients could also be a composition of 108 different herbs prepared or gathered in a certain and specific way, and that's one ingredient.
So we've kind of covered cryptids and we've touched on magic and that kind of culture. So let's kind of move the table a little bit and go into some of the Thai traditions for like exorcisms and stuff like that. Where should we start on that subject?
Well, I guess a really pivotal time where this takes place is as a community service, where you will have what is called a waikru, which is a ceremony that honors a teacher. And wherever you are, there will be certain, think of them as like certain neighborhoods or communities kind of all center around this one shaman, right? So you'll have like, these, they treat it as their birthday essentially. Is it one time a year? And it could be on any day of the year, but it's always the same day of the year per master chooses when their waikru is. And they'll call the whole community there. And they'll use Lucy Narod, which is like a hermit sage spirit. And they have this mask that has the spirit of the Lucy. Calling it a deity is a simple way to put it. It's kind of a little bit different than that, but just for simplicity's sake, they call on this Lucy deity. If there's something in your body, or if you are afflicted, it will be brought before you, and the hat will be, or the mask will be put on you. And at that point, whatever it is comes to the surface. And then the master will go through a series of different prayers to expel it from the body. And then after they're done, they'll be given the nomen, like a special holy water, like bath with like herbs and stuff on them. And then they'll be given an amulet for protection and safety to give. And sometimes they'll also be given like restrictions, like you cannot eat this type of food now, or you cannot do this, or you cannot be in these kind of places. And so there's a very ritualistic element when it comes to the white group, but we also have what's called this is mainly for ghosts, not for demons or otherworldly type of entities. But when it comes to ghost, they'll offer up a pig's head, and they'll give the spirit a very big meal, a big feeding. And they'll say, okay, now you've received the offering, you've eaten. It's like an appeasement, and they'll give the spirit substance, and then they'll honor whatever it felt wasn't received or heard in its life. And then they allow it to cross on with peace by giving it merit. They give it the culmination of good deeds to help it karmically in evolving to a better incarnation when it reincarnates, because they believe in reincarnation. And so if it fights, then what will happen depends on the master. The spirit will then be bound into an object, and it will kind of go through a taming process, and it will work essentially as a totem. Or the spirit ends up being recycled, fed on vampirically by the master and drained, and then it's kicked out. So it's like play nice and there are blessings given to you. Play rough, you will be getting the short end of the stick. They kind of take the carrot stick approach. It's not always just, break out passage and read the Dhamma.
So you kind of mentioned the practices that occur, but if you're from the Catholic Church and you feel that someone's possessed per se, you'll go to the local priest, and then they'll go to the bishop, and then they may decide whether yes or no kind of thing. How is that kind of process carried out in Thailand? Is it the same kind of principle? Oh, yeah, I've got a child who I think may be possessed, so I'm going to go to a religious person.
Yes, so you have one or two options. So one is you go to a local ajarn or lusi, these spiritual masters. You go to them and they provide you help. You donate an offering. Now, it's not about the amount of money. There's not a specific amount, but it's about honoring the lineage. So you make what's called a bangku, and this consists of some fruit, incense, some tobacco, some liquor, money donation, and it could be as small as 20 baht, which is less than $1. And you put all of this on this tray, and the candles as well, and you give this to the master. This offering is not for the master, it's for the master's spirits, the master's deities to receive, who would then in turn help the master in removing the spirit from the person. That's option one. Option two is you go to a temple and you beseech the bhikkhus, the monks, to help you. And they will usually have you recite the Dhamma to you, and they're going to take on more of the role of how a Catholic church would, right? So they're going to do the scripture, the praying, all this kind of thing, whereas an ajarn is going to take more of a role in facilitating with spirits and using spirits to help combat the spiritual. I've seen success in both categories. It really just depends on the family or the person afflicted and what their personal preference is. But help in that regard is very, very accessible. And it's kind of the obvious choice when you're in a situation like that. Everyone would, like there's banging sounds in my house, and there's some weird shit going on, and Ploy will tell the uncle, like, well, you need to call the ajarn. Have you called the ajarn yet? It's just like common conversation.
Okay, so if you talk about it in the Western world, anybody that is potentially possessed can speak in a tongue that they're not familiar with, as kind of like superhuman strength. They can contort their body into different ways and means. Is that similar based in Thailand, or do you not kind of get that same kind of interaction, so to speak?
It is and it isn't. And there's a very interesting point that has to be addressed, and that is the level of development in the country, electricity, cities, etc. So the level of development is why you actually see more ghost possessions, more ghost hauntings. Those are a lot more common. And in those aspects, it's more of like personality change. You don't really see as much of the superhuman strength, some of the talking in different tongues, elements of eye color changing, these kind of things. You'll see some small localized phenomena of like an object might levitate around this person or something. But the the heavy ended ones where you get the growling and the facial morphing, this kind of thing. Um, those tend to be met quite aggressively pretty early on before they can get to that exaggerated like Hollywood movie, type of scenario. A lot of cases that I've personally worked in the US that were extreme situations, the person had been trying to get help for more than months, sometimes even years, but not knowing where to turn, who to call, being called crazy, being rejected, this kind of thing. Whereas over here, as soon as something is happening, like in Thailand, you're gonna have community speaking up, right away. Whether you make the call or not, somebody might be concerned or see something, and they call the Ajarn and tell the Ajarn to come check on you. I think that's a key difference here.
So the next thing that I want to talk about is obviously I'm in North America, in Canada, and you go to plenty of warm places, but we're not going to talk about how is the paranormal culture, like ghosts and poltergeist, recognized in Thailand compared to how it is in, you know, in the Western world, North America, Europe, that kind of thing.
Well, right away, I would say it's more talked about. I've been doing this for so many years, and one of the things I've noticed consistently, with like Western clients is that they often have this sort of reluctancy or shame to speak about the paranormal with immediate family or friends or overall like people in their life, because of the stigma of it in general in the West. And in Asia, it's not really like that. You're going to get, one of two responses. People are going to be scared or they're going to be, very curious and want to know more. But you're not going to really get people as a whole being like, oh, that's BS. I don't believe you. Or, just there's an entirely different climate of it. It's very open. It's something that's, some of Thai people's favorite movies are like ghost movies, like Kumantang 2. You have like the Hud Payan movie, like all these like Thai horror movies are super, super popular because it's also like very relatable. Like everybody knows, a master who practices magic. Everybody has, a family member that was haunted or has a story about, being blessed by some kind of spirit. Like everyone has a level of relation that's very personal with it. So it's much more entrenched and like I said, even on the surface level, uh, in the culture, they have sanpakum, the little spirit houses. They're everywhere. They're all over the country. A lot of foreign tourists go there and see them and don't even know what they're looking at because they don't know the culture. But you go into shops and there's statues for Nanquak, a deity for like bringing wealth into the business. You see magic practiced at all levels across society, and you also see the discussions of spirits and how to deal with them, or what's to be expected, positive wise from certain types. It's just very standard in the country.
And is that the kind of same for if you get like paranormal, not paranormal, like poltergeist activity as well? Is it kind of treated along the same kind of route?
I mean, it's going to be met with a more heavy hand. Um, there's another level of it, which is when it's something is so common, you also get less skepticism in situations that people may mistakenly think is paranormal that isn't. And that someone with a Western judgment or mind frame would be like, couldn't it be old pipes, or couldn't it be this or that? You don't really get that line of questioning in Thailand. You get a lot of, oh, it's a ghost, you know. So it works in both directions. It's something that's more talked about, more accessible for help and services and inclusivity. But also, you get less discretion on what is truly paranormal and what is easily explainable. So when you do see the situations where there is very undeniable phenomena occurring, that tends to be treated in the same aspect as somebody calling 911 because there's a fire. You know, it's very much so like, we have to deal with this right away. If you're calling the right people, which everyone knows someone, or they directly know the type of person they should be calling for that.
Okay. And you kind of mention like the shamans and the masters and that kind of thing, but are these individuals also the kind of people that have mediumistic skills and psychic skills, or are are other people having those kind of abilities?
They do to varying extents. It really depends on the person and what they practice. So, you know, I met this one monk, Lompo Itnai, and Lompo Itnai, he I don't like going to him, because every time I go to him, he would tell me something really messed up, and then it would be about stuff he has no idea about in my own personal life, and then the very specific things he mentioned would happen. I got I got screwed out of a business deal by a friend, and he warned me about that happening before I even had that business deal take place or even knew about it with this friend. He warned me about it beforehand,
Wow.
before it even took place, and he warned me about an ex-girlfriend that did exactly what he said she was going to do. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, she's there's a girl and she's going to cheat on you. No, it was like there were very specific details, and he described her. And I had like just started dating that woman, and he had not met her. He doesn't know my friends, or you know, like, this is just some monk that I would go see from time to time. And so he had a gift of foresight, most definitely. And then there's Lucy DJ, who channels spirit of a god named Prapechanurakom. He lives in Isan in Konkan. I've gone and I've seen him. I actually have some very crazy stories involving him. But you know, he is a not trying to say this in a rude way, but he's a simpleton. Um, he's not an educated man. Um, a lot of people would use the clinical definition of mental retardation. You know, he's got some disabilities mentally, but when this God comes inside of him, he speaks fluently in proper grammatical format. He is highly intelligent. He is all-seeing, and it makes you wonder, you know, if his everyday is an act, because of how drastically different he is when this God is inside of him. And it would be believable to call it a con if the man hadn't been married to the same woman for 30 years and had the same friends for almost 50 years and have children and people that are around him and know him personally and know he's been like that his whole life. And that this
Wow.
God has only started coming into him in the past 10 years. So, you know, there are some very interesting characters, to say the least. Some have that mediumistic quality. Some of them have enhancements with the magic that they practice. But you know, it's like it might sound a little bit corny, but it's like it's a bag of chips. Are they potato chips? Are they Funyuns? Like, what flavor are they? Like, it's all a bag of chips at the end of the day. But there are subtle differences in flavor, texture, ingredient.
Yeah. And it's interesting how in the Western culture we kind of have one God, and anybody that's religious, whether you're Christian or whatever, Catholic, whatever, all kind of agree that it's the same person. But in the Asian world, you have multiple, like you've just mentioned. So, how much of an impact do these, I don't want to sound offensive, but these other gods, how much of an impact do they have on the day-to-day life of individuals?
Quite a bit. Like, it, from this is just my observation, mind you, but I noticed that these other gods, as you refer, more of like services, provided. So there are some people who directly worship, as in the same way that Christian-based worship looks, right? They see this as their deity. They completely submit to it. But most people don't view it in that context. And even if we're going by Buddhist doctrine, it says not to see deities in that way. And it's more about yourself, your own spiritual journey, and the betterment of your soul's development, and using what is both able to help you be less distracted to focus on that more, or to ease the suffering so that you're able to get the most out of this life. And working with different deities is a very good way to kind of lessen that burden. When it comes to big businesses like the Hilton, the Marriott, like these major hotel chains, they will, or even banks and stuff, they'll specifically have statues of a deity called Prapom, which in India they would call Brahma, right? But here, this is the four-faced cardinal direction wealth deity that's used by the elites. And he spares no expense if you spare no expense. So it's kind of like that invest in me, I invest in you type of logic. And then you have, like I had very briefly mentioned, Nanquak earlier. She was a merchant's daughter that the Buddha had blessed. And whenever her daughter would bring her to the market, all of his wares would sell. If he didn't bring his daughter to the market, nothing would sell. When she died, she became deified. So she was just a human, but the belief in her deified her consciousness, deified her spirit, and she grew in that power. And now she is widely recognized as a true goddess. And statues of her, she looks like this little Asian girl kind of doing this, like the calling the money to you, So probably seen like the Chinese cats that swing the hand back and
Yeah,
forth.
yeah, yeah.
So neck walk is like that, and that's used by businesses, and you'll see that in all of the businesses. And then you have like certain ones that some people kind of fear, like Krubakao. And Krubakao is like he's a Lucy, god that's vampiric, and he accepts sacrifices of blood. So a lot of people have a fear over this type of God, but people that work with that type of God say it's misunderstood. So you have this. I wouldn't even call it a competition of sorts, but you have this variety of options available to you, and it's more like which one speaks to me the most in my situations and aligns with what I believe or am drawn to. And that's what you work with, whether it be Ganesh, whether it be Prabhupada, Nanquak, Sihu Hata, the five-eye, four-ear little goblin, who poops gold and eats hot coals. It's there's so many different types. So it's not even seen as like a, you know, this is my true God and that's your true God type of thing.
Yeah. You mentioned about this girl passing and then becoming a deity. How common is that to happen? Because obviously it's not going to happen to everybody, but yeah, how special was this individual? And yeah, I know you can't really say it, but how many times would it happen in a year, kind of thing, if you know what I'm trying to get at?
I wouldn't say it would happen in the context of how many times it would happen a year. It's how many times would it happen um, historically, based on the importance of a person. So a few other examples that come to mind would be the warrior general Kun Pen, who was a real man that lived. He's surrounded in lore and myth, poems and epics. He created the first Gumantong from his own dead child. He, has historically been cited as, taking on 30 men in this one battle and killing them all and being the only survivor from that battle. But then there's other stories where it's like, is this just story or is there some truth to it, where he had an army of ghost soldiers and stuff like that? So, Kun Pen is used mainly for sexual attraction, like aggressive sexual dominance. Because as much of a warrior as he was a very charismatic lover too. So the context of what he became most famous and deified for doesn't really make sense when you compare, like, historically what he was most relevant for. But people grasped onto certain aspects of his nature, and that was what became most popular about him, amulet wise. And then you have like Aikai. Aikai was a young child monk who died about like 300 years ago. Lumpur Tuad, which is a very famous monk in Thailand, was his teacher. And he went away on Tudong, like a pilgrimage, and he left Aikai at the temple because it was too dangerous to be walking a young child monk through the jungles for an extended period. And so while he was away, Aikai developed they called it like a sleeping sickness that burned up his body and he would not wake up. Most likely he died from, you know, uh, some form of I would say like maybe from a mosquito-borne illness, and so when Lumpur came back, he deified. He decreed that Aikai was too pure of a monk, to be in this world, and so they created a statue for him. That temple is now where people go to do lottery. They go there, they ask Aikai, they leave these rooster statues there and fireworks and little toy cars and fake like little guns like kids play with. And so they leave that there and they hit the lottery big, they come back and they bring double of what they brought as their offering as a thank you to Aikai. So Aikai is now a god, which is weird because he's a monk, but he's also considered to be a gumantong as well, which is like a baby ghost. So he's kind of like a hybrid. He's a deity gumantong monk spirit. There's a lot of different examples, and it does happen more than you would think, but not not in the context of just anybody could be, right?
Yeah, yeah. So let's keep comparing the Western world to the Asian world. We have one guy, and you've just spoken about a selection of gods that they and deities that they have in Thailand. But is there one that's more powerful than the rest, so to speak, or are they all kind of on a level plane?
Well, it depends on the branch. So, for example, when it comes to, protection from, black magic or, spirits and ghosts, nothing is greater than Pujao Saming Pai, which is a tiger-headed Lucy god. There are many different gods for this type of protection, but like Pujao Saming Pai is the best. But you also have Tawesuwan, the god of the giants, the ruler of the Yaksa dimension, the lord of ghosts. He is equally as popular, but not because he's just as good. He does the same thing, but he also does more. He's good for wealth also. And you see statues of him in front of, like, every Thai temple you go to is going to have a Tawesuwan statue guarding the front. Always. There's usually two of them right at the front before you walk through the door. So you have Tawesuwan, but then Prapom is more known for wealth than Tawesuwan. So you could say the best spirit for both of these things is Tawesuwan, but the best one for wealth is Prapom. The best one for protection is Pujao Saming Pra. So it really becomes a matter of, is it this one thing we're talking about the best at, or the best at these things collectively?
This one thing that I don't like about when I talk to you is, number one, you come out with all these big names that I've got no way of pronouncing. And then I just kind of go, okay, what can I kind of ask next? It's great. I love it because, yeah, not that I'm going to remember any of these names, but it's really interesting to talk about how different cultures see, like the paranormal or religion. And yeah, I keep comparing the Western world with the Asian world. Yeah, we have one God where they have different ones. So I know that you're going over there in a few weeks. So is that for a religious purpose, or is that, for business kind of, or pleasure?
A multitude of reasons. I have, reasons why I have to go back every year. Like some of the rituals that I take part in with my teachers, I have an obligation to attend those same rituals every year to perform them. There's also an aspect of honoring my teachers and showing that proper respect by going to them and, giving them, not just, money donation, but, that genuine energy and attention and saying, like, I'm happy to be here and I'm glad that I get to see you again. And I'm happy to learn more from you. So there's this kind of aspect of it. But I absolutely love, the country too, the food, the sights, all of it. It's very much home for me. I lived there for almost 5 years. And then there's, the time I'm going back is going to be just before Songkran, which is the Thai New Year. Their New Year is in April, not in January. And so I will go there for the water festival as well. And there are some religious aspects of it that are really nice to participate in. And then, I have to pick up more amulet stock for my shop. And yeah, I just kind of have so many reasons that I go back.
Okay. So I was just going to say, bring me a souvenir, but yeah,
I can do
I,
that for you. What do you want, man? What are you interested
hey,
in?
you surprised me. You surprised me. Make sure it be something like unique. I thought,
How about a preserved boar fetus covered in gold?
oh yeah, that's really going to be fun coming over the border with that, isn't it? Hey, okay,
Mulukan.
yeah. Yeah. So we are unfortunately coming to the end. So apart from your trip, what else have you got in the pipeline?
Well, um, basically, I have a really, interesting thing I've been partnered up with for the past year now, which is a TV show that I've been doing on newrealitytv.com. So for anybody that's interested in that, I have like all these full-length episodes of my my crazy life in general, traveling all over the world. I travel year round. And then I go really deep into the Thai occult as well in my show. It's consistently brought up and is part of it. So that is something that's been really cool in the pipeline. Other than that, it's just business as usual, man.
Business as usual. Let me think. Oh yeah, being involved with armed robberies.
Oh yeah, that
That's not
was
business as usual, dude.
so the thing was, I was talking to my girlfriend about this today. I said, we both feel safer in Rio de Janeiro. She's from Brazil. We were there for 3 months recently, and people talk about how dangerous South America is, and especially like countries like Brazil. And I felt safer in Rio than I do here in DC right now. And I go right across the street to this laptop repair place, and this guy is freaking robbing the store while I walk in. And I got a knife pulled on me, and it was just such an insane situation. But I'm okay. Everything's fine. Brazil's safer than DC. Just let that be the takeaway. We're
Oh
gonna
man.
stigmatize things, man.
Yes, but I absolutely love talking to you because like we have a blast every time. But I hope you have a absolutely amazing water festival. Have an amazing trip in Thailand. How long are you out there again for?
I will be out there for at least 5 months. So
Oh, what a
wow.
bummer. Yeah. Oh, that's really rough. I
Yeah,
can
I know.
imagine. Yeah. Uh,
Cool.
just remind just remind people where they can get all your information and buy your amulets and take
Yeah.
courses and stuff.
www.thesadhudah.com. TheSadhudah.
Awesome. My friend, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Try not to get involved in any more robberies while you're in Thailand. It wouldn't be good.
I know. I know. I think we only have to worry about that in DC.
Okay, my friend. For
Thanks,
now,
brother. Have a good
thanks
one.
for take care. Bye bye.
Bye.